Let's talk about some of the challenges of nuclear. One of those is the waste issue. I know there's plans for a deep geologic repository, and looking to get community permission in I think Ignace and in South Bruce. I've been told that you speak to this issue often, and I'd like to kind of hear your take on your perspectives on the waste issue.
Yeah, let's talk about that. It's been used by the anti-nuclear movement as a way to drive fear about nuclear power. But when you think about it, it's one of the only industries that really captures and contains its products. We don't have emissions. We don't send it out to the environment, right? So we capture it, we contain it, and we hold it in canisters. We have about 50 years of waste right now in canisters that are sitting in an area about the size of a football field. What other industry can make that statement? I often, when you think about clean energies, we talked a little bit about solar panels. Like, these solar panels last about 20, 25 years. Like, where are they going to go afterwards? What landfill are they going in? Or worse, are they going to end up like plastic, where they're going to be floating around our waterways, right? Folks are going to dispose of them. There's no recycling program or anything to capture them at any scale like that. And then the same thing with wind units. What happens with those components? They're going and getting buried in landfills. So, when I look at the waste issue, I think it's both for renewables and nuclear, it's in much better position than fossil fuels, where the emissions simply go into the air and they're not accounted for. Other industries like the plastic industries, even automotive, like, what happens with those wastes? Where do they end up at the end of the day, right? They're not controlled. The emissions aren't controlled. So I think we've got a pretty good story on that once we get past the fear. So first, it can be stored safely, and it has been for many, many decades, and can continue to be stored for many, many decades safely. There's some areas around the world that have looked at geological repositories as a way of containing it for the long term. Finland has one. Sweden has announced one. Others have them. You also can look then at recycling. France has been recycling fuel for decades, and they've recycled it for Japan, Germany, and UK over the years. Other countries have looked at building recycling centers. In fact, the United States used to recycle fuel before the SALT agreements, the nuclear agreements with Russia, where Jimmy Carter agreed to take the recycling plants out of service. So there was one in New York and one in Illinois at the time. So it can be recycled. And when you look at now the newer technologies as it relates to the small modular reactors, you see Bill Gates' TerraPower with a traveling wave reactor that uses spent fuel. And then you also can see Moltex here in Canada that's working with New Brunswick Power with an application that can also use spent fuel. So there are plenty of options. They're really not technical issues to be had. It's more of policy issues in terms of what would be acceptable to governments and how governments want to handle. And I think it's going, in the end, it's going to come down to making smart choices around the environment versus fear. And I think a lot of times that fear component gets amped up. And quite frankly, it's not based on facts. And a lot of these things are just rhetoric that have been repeated so often over the years that people somehow think they're real. And I think some of the movies that you're referring to, and there's one called Pandora's Promise as well that came out some years ago, that start to poke holes in the myth, as I'll say it. I have hope that the younger people especially have an interest in clean energy. A lot of the young people that we're hiring consider themselves environmentalists. They're coming here because they will know that nuclear energy is good for the environment, and they feel good about what they do every day. In fact, I keep this on my desk as a reminder, like this little cube, I don't know if you can see it or not, but if you used all the energy that you use for a year from nuclear energy, this would be the amount of waste that you as an individual produce. So what else do you do in your lifetime that you can make that statement? Think about that, right? The plastic that comes through your home every day, right? The gasoline that goes in your car, the tires that you change on your car, right? The pieces and parts that come off of it, right? I think it's a very much a misrepresented story in that space. So I look forward to being able to continue to talk about this as an industry, and and have people like yourself begin to speak about what you've done the research on and you understand it. And I think, like in places like Finland, where the facts were exposed, people took the time to understand. You're seeing a small country like Finland move more and more towards nuclear as a clean energy source, including building a repository. And you're seeing the same type of momentum in Sweden and other places.